Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for the Sporting News. Vinnie, how are you this morning?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We appreciate you joining us. It's the week leading up to the Super Bowl. We're feeling good, excited about the big game coming up here. But before we get to the matchup between the Chiefs and the 49ers, I wanted to ask you about some of the NFL awards that the Sporting News put out last week. I know there was a pretty heavy flavor of the Dolphins and Lions in that group. Was there anybody that ended up winning those awards that the Sporting News crew voted on that surprised you a little bit, or did things kind of go how you thought they would?
Well, a couple things surprised me. I think people were into the Lions a lot across the league. There's a lot of different head coaching candidates that were in the play for Coach of the Year. You had Kevin Stefanski, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan with what he did. You have D'Amico Ryans as a rookie. So there were a lot of good candidates there. So it surprised me just how much the Lions got the love, not only for Dan Campbell, but for Brad Holmes as their executive of the year. I mean, he's done a great job. And just the love and people rooting for the Lions outside of Detroit, because this is voted on by peers. So executives vote for executives. You've got coaches voting for coaches, and also looking at the all-pro team. And then you have players looking at players. So there was a lot of respect there. There was also a lot of respect for Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill, where, look, Christian McCaffrey easily could have been the offensive player of the year, but that was going to Tyreek Hill. And then you look at Tua, I mean, he played all 17 games. That was a big development for him. I know there were other guys. DeMar Hamlin, I think, maybe was perceived as not playing too much. I know of all the comebacks, that's probably the greatest he can ever make, but I think that was looked at, okay, he didn't play a significant role on this team, so let's go there. And I don't think Joe Flacco played enough here in the stretch run for the Browns to say that he would be a candidate. So it means a lot of different things to different people. So maybe a few surprises there. And then one that might surprise some readers is Puka Nacua over C.J. Stroud. But look, when you set the record for receptions and yards as a rookie receiver in this league, not very easy to do. And I think that's why he was rewarded.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News. He covers the NFL. Looking at the All-Pro team, I think maybe the only surprise that would jump out to most people is maybe Raheem Mostert in that second running back spot. Obviously, McCaffrey was going to take one of those, but Mostert, you call him a late bloomer in the write-up there. 31 years old, has his best season of his career. Just kind of, how did he get to this point where at age 31 he's able to put up 1,000 yards and 18 touchdowns?
Yeah, I think it was the right system. He's been in the system for a long time. We know that with San Francisco, going back to the zone blocking system. I mean, started out as a special teams guy, so the fact that he developed into this over his career and persevered to stay in the league, a lot of running backs are long gone, especially special teams types guys, but he's stuck around with his speed, his knowledge of the offense, being able to be relied upon whenever he gets called upon, and it's really good for him. I mean, all the injuries he's had, I mean, go figure, where's his jersey number, 31? He's just a touchdown machine this season. So he could have gone in many different ways. I think you had Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe didn't put together the rookie numbers we expected. You had Nick Chubb get hurt. Austin Eckler kind of faded. Jonathan Taylor didn't play for a while either. So it kind of opened the door for a kind of a surprise second running back behind McCaffrey. And I think that's led to Mostert. And I think, again, he has a very respectable story that a lot of people would like to follow in this league.
One of the other awards was Coordinator of the Year, Mike McDonald of the Ravens, their defensive coordinator. Obviously, he is off to go be the head coach of the Seahawks now. In your mind, was it clear cut that he was the best coordinator this year, or did how much consideration did the guy on the other side of the ball in Baltimore get, or a guy like Ben Johnson that was a really popular name this year?
Yeah, I think McDonald, just given the expectations for the Ravens defense, I think there were some pieces there, but I don't think anyone expected them to lead the league in sacks with 60, be this great pressure defense. He really was great at mixing up the secondary. They often used 3 safety looks back there that were very effective. He knew how to use Geno Stone and Kyle Hamilton, the 2 safeties, to maximum effect on the back end to make big plays. So it was innovative scheming. So sometimes you look at just the results, but here you look at the process that led to the results. It was very surprising and very innovative, where you might see more teams do that. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for them in the end in beating the Chiefs, but no one can say the Ravens defense didn't show up in that game.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News. Vinnie, I wanted to stay on kind of the coaching trend there for a little bit, because with the hiring of McDonald in Seattle and Dan Quinn with the Commanders, it appears we will have the first season in the NFL since 1974 that Bill Belichick will not be working in the league. How do you think we got to this point where none of the open jobs worked out for Bill Belichick?
Yeah, I don't know if any of these jobs are big enough for Bill Belichick in terms of just giving him the entire power, but also from the other perspective of, did these teams feel like they were in position to get a Bill Belichick, right? In terms of, you got to do some work on a lot of these rosters, including the Chargers, where Jim Harbaugh went. I mean, the difference between the Chargers and all those other openings, you have a very clear quarterback answer for the future that you can get to winning rather quickly. But in all the other cases, once that was not available, I mean, you got to figure out quarterback. I mean, starting in where he left in New England, but Atlanta, Tennessee, there's a lot of questions. Carolina, whether it's an existing quarterback or the future quarterback, that's a lot. And maybe some didn't see Bill Belichick as a rebuilder type that could do that based on his recent game track record. Some maybe saw that, hey, wait, how long is he going to be able to do this? He's going to turn 72. We might need to have a guy hang around for a few years. So I don't think anything lined up. Now, that said, if the Cowboys or Eagles had become available here, knowing the nature of those teams, and Jerry Jones in particular, if they were on demand here for trying to win a championship, I think that would be more of an appealing team. So let's watch out for next year. That might be a better move anyway for Belichick as he tries to pass George Halas and Don Shula as the all-time coaching wins leader.
Well, so you kind of answered my next question there, because as we get further away, another year, maybe you see him get a opportunity next year. But if it doesn't happen next year, are we getting to the point where Bill Belichick's career might just kind of unceremoniously be over?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing he could do, I don't see him doing this, is taking a defensive coordinator job somewhere. Maybe it's Miami. Maybe Nick Saban convinces him to go to his old NFL stop or something, and that's where they try to win. But I can't see that at this point. I mean, I don't think he's one of those guys that we've seen in the past, like Dom Capers or even Steve Spagnuolo or Dick LeBeau, right? I don't see late career got his chance as a coach, because he's been way more successful than all those guys as a head coach. So I don't see him kind of just falling back. Same thing with Pete Carroll. I don't see, based on everything he's accomplished, I don't see coming back in that capacity. I could be totally wrong, and it could be more like, I'm bored and I need a defensive hobby here to stay in the league. But
his retirement gig.
Yeah. Overall, though, I think it's probably next year or bust. I think he has to get back in the league because, again, every year passes, the opportunities go away, and time is running out on him breaking that record. But I think, unfortunately, I really think this is a part of it, why he wants to keep coaching, is I think he definitely wants to be on top of that record book, being such a historian of the game, on top of being a great tactician.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News, covering the NFL. We had some movement, some weird goings on with Cliff Kingsbury and where he ends up as offensive coordinator. Looked like that was all but a done deal with the Raiders. That falls apart seemingly at the last minute. He ends up with the Commanders. Is he a guy that is in high demand in the NFL in terms of offensive coordinator jobs? Or I guess kind of how did that situation play out?
Yeah, I think definitely the Commanders are trying to really, if you look at it, they're really trying to tap into what the Falcons did a few years ago. Dan Quinn was the head coach. He had a hotshot offensive coordinator with Kyle Shanahan. This was in Super Bowl 51. They went and had Matt Ryan become the MVP. So, look, there's some parallels there, right? If you want to go defensive-minded head coach, it makes sense to bring in more of a guy that's going to be a little bit more radical offensively, so you have the guy keeping in check. But maybe it's a whole ploy, right, and trying to make sure that you're an appealing destination for Caleb Williams. And I think the Commanders probably said, look, we're the number 2 pick right now. There's a chance the Bears don't go for a quarterback. If not, we don't have to do as much to trade up as the Raiders do to go get Caleb Williams, who Kingsbury worked with at USC. So it makes a lot of sense. I think you look at that, and you also look at the Justin Fields situation, what the trickle-down is, right? The Raiders might be easier for us to get Justin Fields. So it's very interesting what's going on with the number 1 pick, right? I mean, the Raiders have Luke Getsy now instead of Kingsbury, so he was tied to Fields last year in Chicago. So it might be an interesting battle developing between Washington and Las Vegas trying to make a move here for Caleb Williams. So I'm going to watch that. That's going to be one of the best draft storylines as we go forward.
Well, Vinny, I wanted to switch gears to the big game coming up, of course, on Sunday. Chiefs 49ers, a lot of Chiefs fans here in Omaha, Nebraska. What's going to pose the biggest challenge for Patrick Mahomes at Kansas City?
Well, you look at this matchup, and I think they kind of have to stick with what they've done, is that San Francisco has been the worst run defense in the playoffs so far. They've had some issues, especially on the outside, and that's been the case all season long. Inside, they're a little bit better since Eric Armstead returned, but when you look at it overall, I mean, that's what the Chiefs need to do. They've been very committed to it, not only having some success, but they're sticking with it. So that takes pressure off Patrick Mahomes. They're changing the way they approach it, and the 49ers need to be prepared for this. So this is going to be a running team that's going to take pressure off Mahomes. So, and another thing that's really not worked in the 49ers favor, typically they've been good at covering the tight end, but that's kind of fallen apart as well this season. So some of the things that you could count on with San Francisco that could really hurt Kansas City are not happening in this game. So really it's about the Chiefs being patient. Being patient, don't force things that aren't there. They're going to be a little bit tempting here because the secondary of the 49ers can give up some big plays. But if the Chiefs are methodical in this game and do what their game plan asks for, I think they'll win, because you look at the other side, I think they do have a big defensive edge in this game.
So, Vinny, you kind of mentioned the defensive edge there. What is the path to victory for the 49ers if they are able to pull this off?
I think the 49ers need to just make the centerpiece Christian McCaffrey, and if he can get going early, I think the Chiefs are going to be trouble, because the Chiefs' weakness is also run defense. If you look at it from the season, the thing that helps the Chiefs is a lot of teams get out of their heads, right, and say, oh, we got to go keep up with Patrick Mahomes, but that's not looking at the way the Chiefs are playing now, right? If you want to win this game, you got to get physical, get down to their level, commit to the run. And you want to take pressure off Brock Purdy, because you saw the Chiefs secondary. They're nasty. You don't want to get things downfield, force your quarterback to throw balls deep. You know, that's a strength of Brock Purdy, pushing the field here with his arm, but that's not how you want to approach this game as 49ers. So it'll be interesting. This chess match, I think running is also going to protect the defense on both sides. So if the Chiefs can slow down McCaffrey, I think that's going to be the biggest thing. If they can do that, then they can feel really good about winning, and everything else kind of falling into place.
Vinny, you mentioned Brock Purdy there, and I'm glad you mentioned that one of his strengths is pushing the ball down the field, because there's this narrative out there that he's this dink and dunk quarterback, and obviously he's got a lot of playmakers that can do a lot with the ball after the catch, but he also has, I believe he led the league in completion yardage through the air before the receiver ran after the catch as well. What do you expect to see from Brock Purdy in this game? You mentioned the really good Chiefs secondary. Obviously, it's his first time in a moment like this. Do you have any idea what to expect from Brock Purdy?
Well, I think Brock Purdy's going to have to trust the guys around him a little bit more, shorter passes. And the funny thing is, people talk about Brock Purdy kind of as a caretaker game manager, but I don't think he is. And that sometimes is his weakness. You know what I mean? Like, he's throwing downfield and taking those shots, and he's so confident in his arm, and he's put the ball in incredible places downfield that sometimes it's okay not to do that and say, I'm going to check down and I'm going to throw a little bit shorter here. I know he can do that and he can execute that, but when you're facing a higher degree of difficulty against the Chiefs secondary and their pass rush, I think he has to play within himself. So it's kind of weird that I think he's far from a game manager because he takes a lot of chances. And I think that's where you're more concerned with him sometimes, where, look, he's great and accurate and puts a nice deep ball there, but if he's forcing it and he's under pressure, feeling a little bit off and throwing just a little bit too high or rushed, that's his problem. So I think maybe playing a little bit more contained and realizing as much as he needs to play well to win this game, it's more about trusting everything around you, because that's really the key to winning the game for the 49ers.
Vinny, when you are looking at, you mentioned, obviously you think this might be a run-focused game in terms of both offenses. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey better than Isaiah Pacheco, but the 49ers rush defense has really struggled compared to the Chiefs rush defense. How do you balance that out in your mind, and maybe who do you give the edge there to?
Well, I think the biggest matchups we're going to watch are going to be along the lines here. I mean, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, if they can take over the game inside, I think it's over. I mean, the 49ers want to play this as an outside game. They want to get Nick Bosa and Chase Young after Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor. We know those guys have struggled a lot with different pass protections on the edge this season. So they want to make it an outside game. The Chiefs need to make it an inside game. And I think you look at the Chiefs, I mean, they can get to you inside and then outside on the other side. If you think about that with the way George Karlaftis is playing, the way that Chris Jones is playing. So their pass rush is a little bit more versatile. I also know that Steve Spagnuolo isn't afraid to blitz with key spots where the 49ers are not really a blitzing team. So when you look at the way the pressure breaks down, if the Chiefs can wear the 49ers down inside, then they won't have to worry about what happens on the outside.
Vinny, we're 6 days out from the Super Bowl. If I had to pin you down and get a prediction on who you think ends up taking home the Lombardi Trophy, who are you going with at this point?
Yeah, I'm definitely going with the Chiefs. I mean, it's not really – I mean, everyone's going to say, how can you pick against Patrick Mahomes? That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the profile of these teams. What team has a better defense? It's the Chiefs. What team has a better quarterback? It's the Chiefs. What team has the better coaching in these types of games? It's the Chiefs. So that's how I look at it. I think it's a complete way of the Chiefs handling this game. Now, I'm not saying they're going to blow them out, but they don't need to, right? And they just need to win the game like they've done before to Patrick Mahomes. So, again, when I'm looking at the Chiefs, I look at a complete team with a better team on the field. That's what I'm going with.
That's Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for the Sporting News. Vinny, we appreciate your time as always, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
All right, thank you.
That is Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News on the War Horse Sportsbook Hotline. Good stuff there. He's one of the first people I've heard talk about how he thinks the Chiefs are actually better everywhere outside of quarterback. Most people kind of lean, that the 49ers are the more complete overall team, and that Patrick Mahomes is the wild card there. I tend to believe that as well. I do think he brings up some good points about some of the holes that have been poked in the 49ers defense as of late.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the secondary and you can point to that, but also the run defense, I think, is going to be an interesting factor. But if I'm looking at McCaffrey versus Pacheco, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey every single time.
Yep,
right?
100%.
And then you look at Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes, of course, you're going to take a guy in Mahomes. So I think it's a really interesting balance matchup. And I think each other's strengths are similar and each other's weaknesses are similar. So I think it's going to be a good one. But I just look at what Brock Purdy can also do with all the weapons he has around him. And I liked how Vinny actually had good things to say about Brock Purdy. Like, I'm a big Brock Purdy fan.
Me too.
And I don't think he's a game manager. I think he can extend plays with his legs. I think he has incredible accuracy, and he's had a great QBR, like one of the best in the league the entire season. So it's kind of incredible to me that he has to get to this point of bringing a team to a Super Bowl in his first full year of starting, that people still disrespect him so much. And like, I was going to ask Vinny too before we let him go, like, if Brock Purdy wins the MVP and obviously wins the Super Bowl, would he get the respect? Would he get put in the elite category in the NFL for quarterbacks? I honestly don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. I think people would continue to point to, because you were kind of comparing these different units for the team. If you compare weapons for Brock Purdy, I think everybody would take those weapons over what the
Totally,
Chiefs have, right?
totally.
The only guy that's close is Travis Kelce, and George Kittle might be the closest
The
thing.
next best, Travis
I
Kelce,
mean,
yeah.
you know, obviously a lot of people like Sam Laporta. He had a really good year, but Kittle is incredible.
Mhm.
Had over 1,000 yards this year. A really, really good tight end. Maybe a little bit better blocking tight end than Travis Kelce is, which is huge in the 49ers offense. But outside of those two, which, you know, you can give Kelce a slight edge, but it's not by much.
Yeah.
Every other position in terms of weapons on offense goes 49ers, right? So because of that, you look at it, and I think you're right. I don't think Purdy, even if they do win the Super Bowl, he wins the Super Bowl MVP. I don't think he is going to
It's a
get.
shame.
Yeah, it really is because I mean, you look at what the 49ers had before him, right? They brought in Jimmy Garoppolo,
Mhm.
who was fine. He got him to a Super Bowl as well. He was a fine quarterback, but he wasn't able to provide the offense with this level of playmaking that
Yeah.
Brock Purdy is.
And you never heard people saying that about Jimmy G,
No.
about that he was just a game manager, whatever. Like,
and you saw the way that Shanahan called games. He didn't trust Jimmy G.
Yeah.
He trusts Brock Purdy dramatically more than he trusts Jimmy G. And then you've got Trey Lance, who they drafted to be that guy. They made him the starter at the start of last year before he got injured. That was the dude. And he's got the physical pedigree. He's got the athletic pedigree. He wasn't able to make the plays that Brock Purdy is. So obviously, you know, people are like, oh, well, anybody can do it in this offense. Well, obviously they can't, because this was the third guy they tried in the last 2 years to do it. And he's the only one that looked like this.
Yeah.
The pieces were all the same.
Out of all the NFL teams, out of all the NFC teams that were in the playoffs, is the 49ers the best chance to defeat the Chiefs?
Probably.
I would say 100%.
Yeah, I think they're the best. I mean, I thought the two best overall teams this year were the 49ers and the Ravens.
Mhm.
I thought that they both had really complete teams. The Chiefs are interesting because they look a lot different than they have in years past, right? The defense is really good,
Yeah.
and the offense has struggled at points. But you could almost make the argument, and I'm not saying this is who Patrick Mahomes is as a quarterback, but he has managed games for what this team needs to a really effectively this year, right? I think he's understood, hey, this isn't a team where we're going to score 35, 38 points a game to win. It's, hey, I need to control the offense a little bit more. I need to control the flow of the game a little bit more. It's almost like in basketball when you want to control the pace a little bit. Patrick Mahomes has done a really good job.
He's a game manager. What are we talking about?
He's managed the game well. I don't know if I would call him a game manager. Coming up next, we're going to get to the Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln.